Hello, this is Professor Neil Hamilton from the Drake University Agricultural Law Center with another installment in the project we call Law for Landowners, 10 Things You Should Know. Today, the subject is 10 things that landowners can do to try to improve the performance of grasslands in Iowa. Iowa is a leader in agriculture. We consistently raise more corn and soybeans than any other state in the nation. But Iowa has more than just row crops. We have over 3 million acres of pasture, meaning that Iowa is still a very important state when it comes to livestock production, particularly cow-calf operations. But our ability to efficiently and profitably raise livestock and increase the number of livestock we have in the state depends on how we manage and use the grasslands that we have, and how we look for opportunities perhaps to restore marginal cropland to grassland. This video presents 10 ways that landowners can improve the performance of grasslands on their property. The first idea is that it's important to understand the natural history and heritage of your property. Before Iowa was settled, we had over 30 million acres of prairie, meaning that almost the entire state was covered with prairie or with oak savannas. Much of this prairie, of course, was plowed under to turn the state into the fertile land that we know, but we still have almost 1% of our native prairies. But in addition, we have several million acres of pasture land. Knowing what your land once was can help you consider the opportunities to perhaps restore the grasslands that naturally occurred there. A second idea to keep in mind is recognizing how important grasslands can be, both to benefit the state's economy, your own profitability, and the environmental performance of our state. Grasslands provide permanent year-round protection for the soil. They provide a way to utilize the productivity of the land throughout the growing season. Farmers who graze grasslands and pastures in addition to raising crops have a way of diversifying their farm operation and taking advantage of all the seasons and all of the properties. Livestock provide a natural source of manure to be used as crop fertility. By covering the ground with grasslands and year-round cover, you both help control soil erosion, but you also provide wildlife habitat, water quality protection, and a number of other environmental and potential economic benefits. So by thinking about how grasslands can be part of your operation, gives you a way to consider how you can benefit yourself, your neighbors, and our state. A third idea for improving grassland performance is the idea of having a plan for what fields you'll have in grass, the livestock you'll raise, and how you'll go about utilizing grasslands as part of your farming operation. You can work with a local NRCS technician to help develop a grazing plan and get their advice on what you can do to improve the grasslands you have, or how to go about restoring grasslands on your operation. When considering a grazing plan, there are a number of questions you'll need to ask. What forages do you already have in place? What type of water system do you have? What will the fencing requirements potentially be? And will you have enough grazing forage to be able to overwinter livestock? By considering these type of questions, you can develop a more effective and efficient plan for implementing grasslands in your operation. A fourth idea for improving grassland performance in Iowa, and even adding new grasslands, concerns using the public conservation programs to do that. The CRP program, the Conservation Reserve, which requires land to be taken out of production and planted to conserve and cover, provides a great way to initiate grassland restoration. Under the CRP, though, there are limitations on whether or not the property can be grazed. But the USDA has other conservation programs designed to assist in the creation of grasslands. There used to be a grassland reserve program. It's now part of the agricultural land easement program. But under this program, landowners are able to actually work with the USDA to establish grasslands and to be able to use them economically in their enterprises. Talking to the local NRCS technicians can help answer questions you might have as to what's required under these programs and the type of assistance that they may be able to provide. As noted, the fifth idea concerns this possibility of using the agricultural land easement program that's offered by the USDA. Unlike the CRP, which involves restrictions for a period of time, the agricultural easement program actually involves the transfer of a legal interest or a conservation easement on the property. A third party, such as a land trust, would be holding the easement, and the funding would be provided by the USDA for the actual restoration of the grasslands. Under this program, though, the landowner whose property is now subject to this easement would be able to make economic advantage of the grasslands, such as by grazing them or including them in their operation. For a more comprehensive discussion of what's involved with a conservation easement, see the video that we've prepared in this series that describes 10 things you should know to understand how conservation easements work. A sixth idea concerning improving grazing opportunities in the state is to recognize how some of the public assistance programs available from the conservation agencies like the NRCS and even the county soil and water conservation districts can be used to help cover some of the other costs that might be associated with grazing, such as establishing water systems or installing fencing. These are practices that can be funded under the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. The seventh idea that people need to keep in mind of thinking about improving grassland is the importance of working with the local NRCS technicians to understand the programs. By contacting them, they can explain what type of assistance might be available in terms of whether the CRP or the Conservation Easement Program, and the other types of cost sharing and financial incentives that might be available for you to consider improving or adding grasslands to your operation. An eighth topic concerning grasslands in Iowa relates to cover crops. There has been much discussion of cover crops and growing interest in using them, particularly as a way to deal with water quality. But it's important to recognize that these cover crops also provide potential opportunities for grazing. Winter rye, for example, and many of the other grasses that can be grown as cover crops can provide excellent forage opportunities. And so whether it's putting cover crops on your own crop ground as a way to expand your potential grazing opportunities, or perhaps working with a neighbor who has cover crops but may not have livestock, so that you can look at how you may be able to pasture your livestock on their land, create important opportunities going forward. If we're going to expand the amount of cover crops in our state to include the millions of acres that people hope for, then figuring out how those lands can be part of a grazing system presents important opportunities. A ninth idea to consider when thinking about increasing the amount of grazing land is what might be the marketing opportunities that could come along with using it? Well, there's an increasing market in the United States for grass-fed beef, as more consumers are interested in meat that may be leaner, or meat that's raised in ways that have environmental benefits, such as permanent grasslands that offer wildlife habitat. This may provide an additional market for livestock that you can produce. It may take extra effort to develop these markets and to identify the consumers, but this meat may sell at a premium and make it that much more economically feasible to increase the grasslands and the livestock in your operation. A 10th and final point to consider when thinking about increasing grazing opportunities in Iowa is to recognize that they can involve more than just cattle. There's increasing demand, for example, for goats, and goats are able to use forage and other types of undergrowth that cattle won't consume. So thinking about grazing in a more holistic way and thinking about how it may be possible to layer multiple species of animals into your grazing operation provides another way to think creatively about expanding grazing opportunities in our state. For more information on many of these subjects, be sure and stop by and visit with the local NRCS officials. They can provide you with answers that you may need on whether or not grazing is an important opportunity for the future of your farm.